Welcome to Human Experience, a podcast about life, sharing experiences, and how to make yourself feel better. Men need to talk more about their well-being, so let's make a start.
Welcome again to the Human Experience. This will be our first episode this week into a new line of topics. I guess Chris and I have discussed our mental health journeys and what we've done to try and improve ourselves and push forward. But what we also would like to just take the next few episodes down the line of is just a bit different that we actually find interesting. And the first topic that we're going to pick today is just talking around news, media, how that can influence people's thinking, how the message gets out to the grand scale, how people at the top have control of what we see. Is it right that we see the information? And what do we use anything to escape it? Is pretty much where the lens that I was looking through when I thought about this episode would be a good episode for us to cover, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. It's again, it's something that we all encounter in different ways, shapes, and forms. And news is everywhere, especially right now, and it's probably about 99% negative as a standard, no matter what time of year it is. But especially right now, you can't get away from it, can you? So of course, it's going to have a massive impact on your personal mental health, and there's a lot to really unpack with this topic. I think me personally, I've had a real up and down sort of relationship with it over the years. I was at one point in time really into like current affairs, and when I went to uni, I did politics at university, and that is just all like current affairs, like what's going on, different policies, what's going on in the world and stuff like that, and totally absorbed in it. And then I felt it really sort of dragging me down just day to day, really like all the ills in the world. What can me, Chris, do about that? And then you start going down that sort of helpless route, or what is the right thing to think? What isn't the right thing to think? Who's right? Who's wrong? Is there a right and wrong? So yeah, that's the kind of spiral I started going down with it. And I have to really I can easily slip back into that if I'm not careful. How about you? What's your sort of relationship with it like?
So, polar opposites to you, mate. I switched off from news at a very young age just because I found it absolutely boring. It bored me to tears. And I'd obviously watch TV shows as a teen, becoming a young man. But then when I hit a certain age in my 20s, like I thought, I'm going to actually have a look at what's going on in the world, and it was just so negative. It just brought me down so badly that I was just like, I can't keep watching this. I can't do anything about it. So that, metaphorically, the head went straight in the sand. Yeah. And then about a year later, I was thinking, like, friends talking about different topics that were coming up in the news, my dad bringing up topics. And obviously I got into social media, and every other post is some kind of topic that's coming up from the news. So once I got into like Facebook and stuff like that, I started to think to myself, like, you can't just bury your head in the sand. Sometimes you need to know what's going on. So when it comes to me voting and stuff like that, I'm taking the right course of action. But recently, which is which I want to double back onto a bit later on, because I might go off on a tangent on this, so you just probably have to keep me in line. But like what I've seen from the media recently is just made me question a little bit as to what we actually what is the truth to what we know. An example of it, I won't go into specifics on who these people are, but it's in the main news media. But a friend of mine sent me an article on someone giving a speech, and it was something that I watched that were live. It was on the individual, and they gave this speech, and to me, I thought that was a very good speech. That's exactly what I would have expected the person at that level to deliver in the situation that I were in at the time. I then watched the same briefing, but hours later in the main time news. And the first article was about 45 minutes to an hour long that I watched in full. They turned that into a 10-minute segment, which I get they've got to do. But the editing, it totally changed the message that were given, if that makes, do you know what I mean? So I was just like, if I would have, like, I can be very much influenced by news that I read, and I can be very much influenced about like what's right and wrong. Like I can watch something on the TV and I'll be like, that's wrong. But me and you have discussed in the past about it depends where you're looking at that from. Like every side has an element where that person feels like no one feels like they're the villain in any scenario. And I've told you I'd go off on a tangent on this, and we'll try and wind it back in. But yeah, anyway, so I watched this news 10-minute like highlight, so to speak, and it just totally was far removed from what the person was actually trying to deliver, and it made him look like a bit of a buffoon. And I was like, well, that's not the truth. But whoever's just watched this now believes that is the 100% truth and nothing but the truth. And I'm like, it isn't, because I've seen it with my own two eyes.
Yeah, it's all about the context, isn't it? Like if you take anything out of context, you can make it into whatever you want. Like I've lost count the amount of times you see like a headline that draws your attention, and you actually read the article, and you're like, that isn't what the article said. Like you've totally sort of got 2 and 2 and come to 5. But if people just read the article header, then they're like, that forms their opinion. And these things, whether you're conscious of it or not, these things do form your opinion. Like, you know, about somebody, a certain politician or what. I've really had to check myself with that, where I've made real judgments about certain politicians. I'm like, really, what do I know about this person other than what I've sort of read on social media or what I've read in the article heading? Is that actually true or not? Because the country right now in the UK especially is very tribal. Like it's they're right, they're wrong, I'm right. And that's the only sort of way to look at it. And I thought it was really funny during the last election, last year, where whether you're right or left, the people on the right were saying, the BBC's full of lefties, like always going on about leftist stuff. And then the left is saying, the BBC's full of righties and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you can put whatever spin you want on it. And I think what the news does at a larger sort of wide scale is put that spin on it. And like you say, who decides what the news is? And there's obviously agendas there somewhere, you know, especially like tabloid media and stuff. They want to sell papers, and I haven't got any stats to go off right now, but I'm sure I've read in the past that negative stuff gets more engagement, especially on social media, which is why people who are looking for that engagement will go with a negative headline to draw more attention to what they're saying.
And I think you once said to me before that, I'm going to butcher it, so correct me. When we were talking about like politics, that it's easier to lead with fear than it is with hope.
Yeah. Because fear is more of a base reaction. It's like you think of your own life. And you might be different to me, but my first thought's usually like, what negative could happen from this situation? I'm getting better as I get older, but like, say you're presented with something like a big challenge. My major thought process first, like, shit, what's going to happen here? Whereas it takes a bit to talk yourself around to think, actually, look on the bright side, this is what it could be. And that bad news or negative news is a quicker sort of gut reaction than positive news. So obviously the people want to get viewers, they want to get, sell papers, all that kind of stuff. So they're going to default to what gets there quickest. And that's the negative side of it, because there's an author called Steven Pinker, and I haven't actually read his books, but I've read a lot of people talking about his books, and I've heard a few podcasts. And one of his books is like looking at the last sort of 50 years. Actually, more stuff in the world's got better than what it's got worse, but you don't hear about it because it's not making the news anywhere. We're all focused on these little things.
Selling papers.
Yeah, actually, when you look at the sort of child mortality rate or famines and stuff, people dying of starvation, although it still exists and it is absolutely terrible, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Compared to like 50 years ago, 100 years ago, the world is getting better in those respects, but that's a boring news story, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, one that always sort of strikes home with me when I talk about the news, and again, it's linking in closely to social media, but me and you, when we saw that article when it was election time in the UK last year. It was last year, wasn't it? Yeah, last year. And there was an article about a little child who'd had to sleep on a hospital floor. And it was like top caption, Tory Great Britain, little kid sleeping on hospital floor. So straight away, that tugged on my heartstrings, that tugged on me as a parent, as a father of two little kids. Like, whoa, what's going on? How would I be in that situation? And then within few hours, a day, there would a counter going, this isn't true, this is slander. Another news article came out saying it wasn't true. So I would then, right, so how am I supposed to judge that's real or not? I've got two people that I've never met, written an article that gives counter arguments, and I have zero proof to tell me other than a photo that photos can be staged or can be true. And I was just like, I'm out. Hands up. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, and I don't know how I'm ever going to find out. So if the person was captured a real photo with a real issues, someone to disclaim that, I think it's got to be very low on the humanity pole to be like, I'm going to falsify and lie about something. Then on the flip side to that, if someone's going to try and smear someone or a party's name by sticking out fake pictures, again, they're not people I want to be involved with. They're pretty low on that humanity stick. So it's like there's a counter to each, and it's like, well, I was out at that point. I just turned the social media off.
Yeah, I'm going to bed. But that's how misinformation works, and that's rife. And read people like Noam Chomsky and stuff like that about manufacturing consent, and it's all about sowing enough doubt. And I'm not making a judgment as to which one of those was right in that story, because I'm still not 100% on it. But it's the one that's been, the bad guys and trying to lie about stuff. They just need to sow enough doubt in your mind that you're no longer 100% sure that something's happening. I'm just going to walk away from this because I can't decide. That they've won there because they've stopped your strong opinion that they were in the wrong by sowing enough doubt. It's slightly going off topic from the news, but we've talked in the past, and you can tell the listeners and myself your thoughts on the what was that Netflix film on veganism again?
Oh, Game Changer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell?
Yeah.
So, a good example.
Yeah, so Game Changer for me were it would almost as if I'd just been awoken to something when I first watched it. I've been, solid meat eater all my life. A lot of it crap, what processed foods, as we've discussed in weeks gone past about my bad eating habits. But everyone were going on about Game Changer. I could hear it everywhere I were going. So I sat down and watched it, and it really did open my eyes. There were a lot of things in it when I at first watched where I thought, wow, I can't believe that. One of the things that really hit home for me were around these New York firefighters that reduced their cholesterols by massive amounts by just 7 days on this vegan diet. But as I was sort of as days went on after I'd watched it, and I thought to myself, I'm going to go vegan myself. I'm going to give it a go. And I did, lasted about 3 weeks, but I did give it a go. As that time started to go on, there were little things that were just cropping up in it where I just thought that hasn't really explained enough to me. I haven't been given enough information. So, for example, on the firefighters, what it didn't tell me is what their diet were like up to that point. So, were they eating healthy, grass-fed meat, veg, salads, all of that stuff? But then they just removed the meat element, which were a good source of meat, and suddenly it rocketed. Or were these guys living on McDonald's 24/7 and then taken off that? That's a big discrepancy from the both. And then I watched a YouTuber, I think his name's Dr. Lane or something like that. It's like a doctor guy on there. Does a lot of bodybuilding talks and things like that as well. And he brought a lot of what I was thinking to light and were able to articulate it a lot better than I'm doing right now. But he was able to articulate things like there's a boxer on there that they push as being a vegan and saying, look at the level he gets to. He challenged Vladimir Klitschko. Vladimir Klitschko eats meat and won. Do you know what I mean? Then they had a strongman competitor on there. And the agenda that they're trying to push with sports, from what I took from it, again, this might not have been what they wanted me to take from it. This is what I took from it, was saying, these people have suddenly improved massively on their vegan diets, but what then they didn't do is do a comparison to show me what their diet was like before, what their testosterone hormone levels were like after swapping diets. What they didn't do is get someone like Usain Bolt, who's the fastest man alive, and go, Usain, tell you what, mate, you've been a meat eater all your life. Do me a favour, eat this for a couple of months. We'll pay you money because you will be able to endorse it, and that'll speak volumes because we back that vegan's the right way to go. Run 100 metres and break your world record. Mm-hmm. Like, there were a lot of... It were very much structured to me in a way that drew me in, and it were all the highlights. It were all the highlights of what they were trying to not sell me, but you know what I mean. It were all the positives. Without it wasn't. It were biased to one side. Yeah. It didn't go, here's this on the left, here's this on the right. You decide which is best. Like we're showing you a counter to both. It was just very structured to me to one side. Now that's not saying that. So one of the big things, that I did like in Game Changer again was the impact to the environment and about the amount of rainforest that's been cut down for the cattle markets. I can't argue with that. I'm behind that. It was just more like the sports science aspect of it. Of you will improve purely because you've gone vegan. Like yeah, of course I'm going to do if all I eat is Greggs every day. Like
anything's better than that. And yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's a context thing again. You can Photoshop or edit whatever you want to get a nice point across that really backs you up 100%. And that's why it's so important to understand that full context. But in the world we live in, quick sort of bite-sized news, quick scan on social media, or you hear the headlines in the background, you don't have a chance to get that full context, and it takes dedication to really. And I don't do it that often, but and I bet Joe Public doesn't do it, just to really understand. Actually, let's consider both sides of this argument and make an informed choice. It's often the one you believe, and it's called confirmation bias. It's basically you believe the stories that fit your worldview and who you think, and that's why it's, a good example I always use on this is a football match. I support Newcastle, you support Leeds. If Leeds win that match between those two, you're happy, I'm sad. But that's just because I've attached my personality to Newcastle, you've attached your personality to Leeds. It's just 11 lads on each side of the pitch kicking a bag of air around. Do you know?
And for 90 minutes, I'm on the enemy side.
Yeah.
And then the whistle blows and you're like, yeah, that's done now, move on. But yeah, so it's from me, it's all like the lenses and the point of views. But with the news and the media, what I've realised a bit lately is that is from a human being's lens. There'll be a producer or whatever, I don't know what, news anchor. There'll be the main man who'll be saying, right, this is the story we're running with, drop them. We've only got an hour to bob it in. We can't possibly get everything in. So I want us to run with this. And it'll be from, they'll edit things down to fit in their time slot. But to me, if you're editing something down, it loses a lot of the message of what that individual is going to say. Definitely. Like someone could edit this podcast, this. I mean, we've been on it 17 minutes now, but put it down to 2 minutes. Pick 2 minutes of this out, and it could be totally different. This session could have been about us hammering Game Changer.
Yeah,
this episode, human experience, hammering Game Changer, 2 minutes, and my voice going off on what I did, what I would have corrected about it. Yeah. When in reality, if they listen to everything, that isn't what it's about at all.
Yeah. And like the people deciding what to go on the news, they've got unconscious biases as well, and especially if there's a real lack of diversity at that level. And again, it's similar to MPs, like 90% of MPs all went to private school. Now that's not to say private school is good or bad or whatnot, but if a big group of people all come from the same background, then they're going to have similar sort of thoughts and opinions on the world. And if that slowly, you can see how the editing process would then be stuff that almost fits their worldview, which is their worldview. It's not necessarily the truth. And it would be really hard. You'd need almost a machine, AI or something, just to select the news based factually on truth of what actually happened and take all the human spin out of it. We'll probably never get there, but humans are imperfect. If you've listened to any of our episodes, it's a battle just to lead a good life, let alone a perfect life. But that's having a negative impact, I think. And especially 24-hour news cycles now, they've got 24 hours a day they've got to fill. That's
that's mental. If you think about it.
Non-stop. And if you've ever been on a couple of those cycles, it is the same stuff every hour pretty much. But it's could you imagine
though, right? I was thinking about this today of how frustrating it would be for you to have delivered a point, for you to be famous or for you to be a top politician or whatever, and you've delivered a point and you've think, I've knocked that out of the park. You turn the TV on and what you've said has been totally butchered and you'd just be screaming at the TV going, that's not what I said. That's not... Yeah. But you'd walk down the street, and if it were a negative spin, you'd have garbage thrown at you.
Yeah.
And if it were a positive spin, you'd have everyone lifting you on the shoulders, and you'd be some kind of hero. And you'd be like, "But I'm getting credit for something that I never actually intended." That'd be extremely frustrating for me.
Oh, exactly, and at that point, no matter what the truth was, it's gone. Like it's already slipped out of your hands. Like it's something slippy. Like you'll never get it back because you've lost that moment, and you'll never get that 20 million people that were watching news that time all in the same room again to say, actually, that's not what happened. Yeah. And when they're coming up with a story, it'll be a full front page headline of like Stuart totally disses Game Changers, thinks it's a load of BS. You'll take the newspaper to court, and when they have to correct it, it's like a little snippet on page 37. Oh, you may have got this wrong, and it's like that's not the same thing. It should be another headline saying we totally got this wrong or we made this up. Do you know what I mean? But it never would be.
That's what makes me check out. I'm not going to lie. That's when I go heads off back at sand, because and do you know what? I might be doing news anchors and stories that I've seen a lot of injustice here. Like that could have just been a one-off, but I feel like I've listened to enough people, and there's been enough of these counter arguments, and like you say, there's been enough of those where someone's taken a big news editor firm to court and won, where I go, oh yeah, whenever there's human error that can come into it, people can unintentionally put their own spin on things.
And to maybe right now we're being a bit kind on some of the news stories to say, oh, it's unconscious bias and that, because that definitely plays a part, and not to get too conspiracy theory on this, like you've really got to ask who owns those outlets as well. And I've just done a quick scan there. We've been talking, and so there's 2 billionaires that own over 50% of the UK printed media. So you've got a person called Lord Rothermere, who's a billionaire, lives in France, Tory supporter, just out of interest, and he owns the Mail on Sunday and the Mail, the Metro newspaper. And so that's it. So they're pretty big ones. And then the other person that makes up the 50% is Rupert Murdoch, quite well known from owning Sky and whatnot. He owns the Sun on Sunday, and the Times, Sunday Times. So they're two billionaires, two single people that own 50% of the UK printed media. Now, it's not too far of a stretch to say, if they did like something, if they didn't like something, that their thought process could get pushed in their newspapers. Like you could easily see that happening. Yeah. And then you've got to ask, who benefits from it, and it's probably that they benefit from it. So there's definitely got to be dodgy actors like that in the world that are pushing their own agenda through these channels, I would say.
Yeah. I from what I've seen recently, and that's why I guess it's quite topical in my world at the minute, in my mind, is this conversation. So, which is why I thought get it out of my mind and get it on here and help my own mental health just by talking to you about it and the listeners being able to listen to it. But yeah, that's the thing for me. It's I don't know what's right and wrong from it. So it's almost like, because again, you touched on conspiracies there, and like, and I know that we've had conversations with people that are very high into conspiracies. Yeah. I've watched a lot of Joe Rogan's podcast, and he has a guy in there called Eddie Bravo who talks a lot about conspiracy theories, and you listen to it, and it's all like, it draws me in. It's intelligent debate, or it comes from an intelligent standpoint, whether you believe it, whether you go, no, that's too out there. But there's always like logic. There's always an argument that you can listen to, and you go, hang on a minute, what? Like, is there anything in that, or isn't there? But then I also think, like, it brings me back to that photo example that I gave earlier. There's two sides to every. There's two people there. One's telling me the truth, and one's lying. How do I? How do I pick which one it is? So if I'm not someone who believes in flat Earth, I believe the world round and that space is a real thing, and we've I'm not going to talk about the moon landing, but I believe we've been in. I believe there's a satellite out there that's taken a picture of Earth, is what I'm saying, and that globe is Earth. But if you were to have like a flat earther on here, they would give you arguments and stuff as to what they honestly believe is genuinely the truth. Now, you've got me who's never been into space. You've got this guy who's a flat earther who's never been into space. Like, who people are just left to believe what, like, you're given two things and you just got to make your own judgment up.
And that's tough because we'll you know, with the best will in the world, we'll probably never go into space and be able to prove it undoubtedly in our own minds. We've got to kind of, you've got to kind of sift through all these little nuggets and, you know, decide what's shit and what's not, and discern for yourself what you think's the truth. And you just have to make peace with the fact that you're probably never going to know truly. I think my best advice, certainly for my own mental health and just to be a better person, is don't get so entrenched in the idea that you're 100% right. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, there's that saying, question everything. You know, don't necessarily go down the rabbit hole of like being absolutely don't trust anything, but just question, you know, who benefits from this? Is it right? Does it fit with all the bits of information out there, or is it just a narrow view? And you can generally get to well, you can at least make more informed decisions, certainly about who you want to vote for and all that kind of stuff, if you take a little bit of time just to look at those facts and decide.
I think you've hit a nail on the head there with what I'm trying to do, and what other friends of mine who I've had these conversations with have advised when I've spoke to them about it. First point of call is to look at what are the two people gaining from the evidence that they're presenting you. So there'll be one person on one side, one person on the other. If one person is bound to make trillions of pounds, and the other geezer, by even speaking up, could, if they are wrong, get discredited, be a laughing stock in their field, and I go, all right, well, what has he got to gain if he's right? Oh, nothing for him personally. It just stops an absolute catastrophe going off for everybody else. Then I'm going to lean to that guy who's everything to lose and nothing to gain, really. Yeah. Been right.
It's true, and I know we're going to touch on climate change and stuff in future episodes. I'm looking forward to that, but it's looking at stuff like that. Well, tobacco is a good one. Do you know, for years and years and years, the companies knew that tobacco was bad for you, you know, cause cancer, all that kind of stuff. But because they earned so much money from it, they paid for scientific studies to sort of muddy the waters with the other scientific stuff, like what we're saying, just sow enough doubt in people's minds that you're still going to keep 50% of people smoking and stuff like that. But when you get behind that truth and you think, oh, hang on a second, who funded that scientific report? Oh, it was Marlboro or something like that. Then in my head, I'm like, why would they be funding that? And what have they've obviously got something clearly to gain out of that.
Yeah. Like, why wouldn't they just go to total independent research and just step back from it? Yeah. And I guess that's where I'm at the minute. I've took my head out of that sand a little bit to just ask that question, like, what are the people having to gain? I mean, in the picture with the boy in the hospital, both parties had everything to gain and everything to lose. So I had no idea where to go. But if, like in the example I just gave, if someone's millions of pounds to earn and someone's nothing to earn but everything to lose, and I'm going to be like, well, why are they taking this stand? What is it in what they're trying to tell me? Why they're taking this stand today? But yeah, like I knew we'd end up going off on a little bit of a tangent on other things from the media, but that news outlet is where and that's not just news TV, but news in papers, news on social media. That's where I look at all this information, and that's where it's supposed to be given to us. So yeah, it all ties in, and certainly I can really get down the rabbit hole and the mental health things when it comes to world affairs, and I have to just take a step back. Yeah,
definitely, because it just works you up, and you feel so like sort of emotionally charged by it. And then I always hit a wall where I'm like, what can I actually do about it? And then I go down the route of like, what's the point? And then you can get in a bit of a downer about that. And I think is a really good sort of quick tip from my point of view is I try and do my full morning routine, which we've talked about in the past, like a bit of exercise, meditation, before I've even looked at any news. Because when I don't do that and I like look, you know, accidentally catch Twitter at 6 a.m. in the morning, and it just sets me in that mindset. You're like, especially right now where like the world, there's a lot of shit going on in the world and it's quite toxic. It can infect you. You can jump out of your phone and sort of get in your head and you're like, put you in a bit of a downer. You've got to really screen time, like check what sources of information you're getting and how long you're spending looking at it. And ultimately, you've only got a certain sphere of influence within your own life. And, that's where your power is, focusing on that and not getting too caught up in stuff that's outside of your reach.
Yeah, and we all have a power of a vote. We all have, that discussions with our friends and families. As a collective, we can make a massive difference. It's just, it's really hard to know the underlying truths of a lot of these stories. Is I guess where I'm coming from.
And I just picture a world where the news was 100% factual truth. Like what?
Brilliant.
What kind of world we live in there? And that's the power of money, I suppose, is at the root of all that. Like follow the money, and you probably follow who wins from certain stories.
Well, it's just like I'm sure it's not my idea, but it was an idea I had. Like I'd not read it anywhere else, but I'm sure someone came up with this before me. But what I explained to you about the voting, where I honestly think there shouldn't be a spearhead of an individual that you're voting for. There should be different policies that you go online to a website, you're giving your own unique ID number, and a policy flashes up and it goes, are you pro or against this? And you do like this survey of what you're pro and against. Everyone in Britain would do that. And then at the end, it'd be like, well, the policies with the most votes, it's the Labour Party that win. And then it'd be an entire party that are working for the public, not a figurehead. And for me, then it just takes all that like rat race out of it and people pushing different agendas, people influencing, and you just get a true reflection of what this party, and then that party are held accountable for what they've put in. They've put in policies that we voted for, and it should be like we would have, like, I'm not saying like as in they should have a 1-to-1, but they should have like some form of like where they're held to account, a 6-month review of how they're doing, how they're performing against these things. And they probably do. I'm not close enough to these things to know all the ins and outs of it, just because of my life full on. But certainly for me, when we were coming up to the last vote, there were a lot of toing and froing where I had to just, I don't want to use the word guess, but I had to just try and ask myself, who did I believe in those situations? And I could have believed the wrong person as easy as it's the right person.
Could just depend on what news you heard that day or what newspaper you read. And that, I guess that's the whole point of this. It's, where you get your news from can massively influence the quality of your life and what you believe in. And our message to you, and let me summarize, is, do your research if it's something you feel strongly about, question both sides of it, and then ultimately decide what feels best for you. But then don't necessarily turn somebody who doesn't believe into that into an enemy of yours, because it's just they've got different beliefs and come from different backgrounds.
So that concludes this week's episode. Chris and I would like to thank you for listening. Please subscribe and leave us a review to help our community grow. You'll find links to our social media and any other resources discussed in this episode in our show notes.